Martine, dépêche-toi un peu. Tu me déséquilibres.
Hey, be careful. I mean, I just lost my balance there.
On va prendre...
Okay. Well, what shall we have
T'as-tu la liste avec...
tonight? Have you got your shopping list with you?
Oh, merde. Oh, attends.
Just a minute.
Oh, merde, c'est un ticket de caisse. Oh.
Oh, right, that's my ticket. Well, there's nothing to do, that's my receipt. There's nothing to do with anything.
Je l'ai.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on.
C'est quoi, c'est mon chéri?
Je crois.
That's it.
Un petit peu. C'est pas gagné, hein.
Okay, well, this is not the end of it, is it?
Merci, ma chérie.
Right.
Oh, retombé.
Oh, dear. I mean, it just dropped again.
Je l'ai.
I have it.
Et une soupe de carottes pour ce soir.
Okay, well, at least we can have some carrot soup tonight. It's supposed to be very good for you.
Carottes.
Je vois pas.
Carrots.
Moi, mais bon. Oh.
C'est du plastique, ça, c'est pas des carottes.
Yeah, but that's not a carrot. That's plastic. Oh, sorry. That's speaking. It's in a bag. It's packaged.
Allez, vas-y.
C'est 5 kilos, moi j'ai pas besoin de 5 kilos.
5 kilos? Well, I don't need that much. Right. Sit.
Bon, ça c'est fait.
Il faut croire qu'on peut faire pommes de terre.
Oh, we need potatoes. Yeah, onions, carrots, potatoes. Yeah, right.
Un peu, j'en ai marre du magasin.
Poireaux.
I'm fed up with shopping, you know.
C'est des bottes de poireaux.
All right. Here it goes.
Il n'y a pas autrement que ce que je te dis.
What are you doing? Yeah, well, I mean, it's not possible any other way.
Les patates, c'est bon, ça y est.
Okay, potatoes. Let's drop them there.
Un couteau, on va passer à la caisse.
Il nous reste des couches, hein. Ouais, c'est bon.
Okay, can we move to the next bit of shopping?
Plastique. T'as vu tout ce plastique qu'ils ont mis avec?
I mean, have you seen the amount of plastic we've got here?
Ils croient vraiment qu'on va faire notre soupe en plastique.
No, well, we'll end up eating a plastic soup tonight if this goes on.
Plastique alors. Non, mais...
Ouais.
Okay, well, we'll eat plastic then.
Bonjour, madame. On va se faire une soupe aux carottes.
Hi.
C'est du plastique, je voulais que je vous dise, c'est du plastique.
We wanted carrots, so we've got plastic here.
Allez, bon.
Allez.
Il faut qu'on y aille, mon chéri. Payer, voilà, je paye. Bip, de toute façon, on n'a pas le temps. Allez, on y va.
Right. Well, okay. As to paying, well, we haven't got time now. Well, that's it now. I mean, we've got no time for this kind of thing. Bye-bye. Bye. This way. Bye.
On va tout casser.
Careful.
Bienvenue donc pour ce troisième acte.
Well, welcome to this performance. Well, we are going to be talking about food, this round table, as you can see. Well, I think you'd seen it, but
Un format original.
well, this is going to be quite creative. We are going to eat and talk at the same time. So, can you sit at the table, please? Jean Muller, CEO from Les Moulins de Kleinbettingen.
CEO de Soil Capital.
Chuck de Liedekerke.
Directeur des programmes et du plaidoyer.
Thomas Uthayakumar. René Mathieu, Julia Gregor.
Mathieu à me rejoindre ici.
René Mathieu is a chef, la distillerie.
Va résider dans le fait que c'est René.
Well, that's going to be quite creative. René actually
Installez-vous.
cooked what we are going to taste here.
Voilà.
Afternoon, René.
d'avoir accepté
Thank you. Thank you for
et de pouvoir déguster.
joining in tonight. And we're going to taste your cuisine. For those of you, if you don't know René, since 2005, you are the CEO of the Château de Moulins in Luxembourg. You're very passionate in terms of creative cuisine. I mean, you want to be in harmony with local producers. You won many prizes. Yes, untouchable. That's what you are. I mean, you are Michelin-starred.
Innovator en 2018.
Culinary innovator. You published a well-known book. And you are Michelin-starred.
Premier plat.
Okay, the first
René.
dish is being served. What is it, René? And what's the underlying philosophy for you? What's the message you want to convey? Well, the philosophy is to use local producers, right? In our environment. It's not only local, it's what we've got in our environment. We realize that we've got quite a nice potential that we do not use properly. And René Mathieu, that's a kind of a tempura. I don't know whether you know what consommé is about. It's been used by gardeners for your plants. It's also used by consu. If you have a bone fracture, they will use that in hospital to consolidate your bones. And we, as cooks, we try to see what we could do with this. Its specificity, it tastes a bit like fish. And when you taste it, it's a bit like eating scampi in a way. Okay. And you've got a cream going with it with mushrooms. Okay, let's taste it. Those are parsnip crisps with a kind of a ketchup. I was done with sweet potatoes, violet or purple sweet potatoes. Thank you, René. René, I know you love going to the woods and into the forest. But what's the link with nature in what you eat? Well, you need to be in touch with nature. That will brings you energy. And in the wild world, as it were, you've got a kind of a logic, a rationale that you don't have in standard food. So for me, so nice to be able to use those plants and flowers. It's like a food complement, right? Well, we know that we've got fewer and fewer vitamins in our veggies today, in our veggies. So, well, that's about life. And eating healthy is so super important. You know, what are all those? We've got this plant that you can use in order to digest better. Well, this was collected locally. Yeah, I did that this morning. So we've got all sorts of plants. We've got mustard. We've got helichrys. Cosmos, come along, which is extremely interesting in the winter. If you've got a cold or a lung infection, flowers are interesting in order to make syrups. In the Middle Age, they would use that in order to produce oil lamps. And here we've got verbena. And here we've got tagetes. And in fact, everyone think that you can't eat this flower, but you can. So either you macerate them, and that's very good for your veins, or others. And here we've got consort flower, fenugreek. What fenugreek?
Ça, ce n'est qu'un échantillon.
C'est ce que j'allais dire. Donc,
Hazelnut, tree leaves.
quand même déjà beaucoup.
Oui.
Well, by and large, we've got about 100 different plants in the summer.
Ces propriétés, on va pouvoir les combiner justement pour amener vraiment les valeurs nutritives qu'on a plus.
In fact, it's all about the nutrients in the plants. Okay, you are going to go to the first floor. You will go to the kitchen. We will have a direct connection with you.
Donc tu reviendras.
See you very soon. Okay, thank you.
Alors, comme je vais avoir un peu de mal à
Right, okay. It may be a bit hard for me to eat and speak at the same time, but I'd like to share this with someone in the audience. If someone wants to taste this very first dish, someone in the team will get it to you. It's so difficult to imagine the impact of our choices in terms of food. So each little bit here has been in several hands. It means exploiting the forest. It means using energy. Experts are talking today about a huge greenhouse emissions produced by our food today. And on top of the climate, what is happened is that water is getting deteriorated in terms of quality. So it is absolutely crucial to think again about the way we eat food. And this will go through more resilient territories and the necessity to go back to local produces. You work for the foundation called La Nature et l'Homme. You actually worked on farming perspectives, deforestation, social economy. How could you sum up the globalization effect of our current food and what is at stake here? Why is it important to eat local? What? And I've got what? 1 minute 30 seconds to do that. Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, you can a little bit over 1 minute 30. Well, eating and producing locally is something we really promote because it's about eating and producing on your own territory. Let me give you a simple example. Meat. When you eat local meat, I live in France. The first question to ask yourself is, okay, along the chain, who are the actors, who are the stakeholders, and what is going to be used in order for an animal to end up on your plate, basically. You very quickly go down to vegetal proteins. They are not being produced on the whole of the territory. In Europe, in France, for example, 50 to 60% of our needs are being imported. It comes from Latin America. Amazonia, well, you know that. Cerrado, for example, and those cultures in South America generate a deforestation and a deterioration of natural ecosystems. Hence, the fact that we've got to think again about deforestation. A regulation was voted in order to ban deforestation in some agricultural communities. And yes, okay, I will eat meat, whether it's poultry or beef, but I'm going to ask myself where it's coming from. Hence the urgency to actually use vegetable proteins, either for animals or for people. And within the same spirit, we have to rethink the production mode.
Merci Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas. Jean, you are the CEO of the Michelin-starred since 2010. Family business. You've been in agri-food for over 2 centuries. Last year, you won a prize with the Sustainability Awards. Could you actually
Important justement cette.
Tell us what your company does. Why is it so important to have this food sovereignty? Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having organized this forum. And thank you for having organized this lovely meal. Les Moulins de Bettingen process cereals mainly in order to produce flour, biscuits, pizzas, and we also have another profile. Over 50% of what we work on, 100,000 tons of raw materials that are being used in producing pasta, for example. We are in 2023. Well, 2 years ago, we launched a new chain, not only to feed animals, but also to feed people. And we launched a new activity, meat alternatives on the basis of vegetable proteins, and the first produces will get on the market this year. You were talking about food sovereignty. Well, that's not something that is a concern to us, or should be a concern to us. The governments should deal with that. What our concern is to produce locally. How we can produce together with our local farmers. We started a program in the 90s. Many people don't know this, but up until the mid-90s, what was actually produced in our mills in Germany or in Luxembourg was not being produced locally because the quality was not there. So my father started that with the Chamber of Commerce, with the Agricultural College, and the idea was to actually have a sustainable produce for wheat. Today, lots of people talk about sustainability, but in those, it's always the same. You start small with 100 tons, and today we've got 250 farmers, 18,000 tons a year on the average. And Luxembourg has over 50% of its wheat culture that can be transformed into flour. And we're very proud of what we actually did in the last 3 years. Thank you, Jean. René, there you are in your kitchen. What are you making there?
Votre approche territoriale.
Can you share with us how you use local producers? Well, it's to be found where you live.
On n'entend pas très bien dans la salle.
We can't really hear you very well. Shall we start again? Well, I can hear you. Yes, well, that's lovely, but we can't hear you very well. I was saying that what's important for me is to work with what we can find locally. And it's also about being seasonal, right? Seasons are so important, respecting the season. And if you produce local produces, you have to respect the seasons, right? It's all there in the environment. There are so many things that you don't know in your environment. It's worth looking into it. Tomorrow, we may have to think a bit more about our direct environment. Jean, you use a whole variety of cereals. And today, with the climate change, they got adapted. They fit our climate a little bit more. You can see here, that's the initiative for which we got this sustainability award. Pasta, I don't know how they are being produced, but it's produced with wheat, with semolina, produced in the south of Spain and Italy. And today, because of the climate change and the fact that it's warmer in the winter, it can be produced in our regions, and varieties had to be adapted. Now, since we work with Semolina, we thought, yeah, it would be good to use Luxembourg wheat. So we tested several varieties over several years. We started doing that in 2015, and it took us about 4 to 5 years to get a good variety, good for the farmer, and well adapted to produce quality pasta, which is why we used this durum wheat, which wasn't the case before, and it means that we've got an additional cereals, and we've got projects for the future as well. So I think our brand will come back at the forefront again. And this paper, I mean, this nice thing there, where can we buy this? Well, this is our new packaging. You can't find it in the supermarkets yet. We've been working on this for a few years. We want to have this cardboard packaging. It will be available in the supermarket as from January to be consumed without any moderation. Thomas, over a century, 75% of the genetic biodiversity of plants has been lost. So faced with the climate change, keeping this biodiversity is so important. So how do you analyze this? Well, you need a rotation. For those of you who don't know, after the Second World War, farming got increasingly intensive, because of the fertilizers, phosphates, and everything, and pesticides, of course, and an improvement in the varieties. So the production systems got simplified, hence monocultures. So rotation is important. What can you do in between two productions? With seeds, for example, the idea is to diversify as much as we can our production systems. I live in France, as I said, so we reduce the use of phytosanitary synthesis systems. Today, it's a failure. We've got a survey, an investigation going on to understand why it has failed. One solution would be to improve on our varieties, but also to bring back some complexity in our production. But in France, we've got wheat, colza. Well, it's about using, I don't know, saffron a bit more, for example, being more complex. It will be more complicated if you use more rye, more alfalfa, for example. But, and just to finish on this, we were talking about importing vegetable proteins. Soja, for example, we import about 3 million tons of soja cake a year, mainly for animal feed. If we start using soja in Europe, we'll have to think about what you can do with this. Because if you don't have the end consumers, it's useless. So we've got a national strategy in France that goes in one direction, but it's not enough. And we need a better operational implementation in order for those types of cultures to be used deep down in the chain. It will be better for animal feed. It will be better to feed people. Yeah, how can we make sure we don't waste food? Thomas, we talked about normalization, standardization, the fact that produces should be put together. Julia, you co-founder of On.perfekt, because that's an organization that was launched in 2021, and you work on social innovation in Luxembourg as well. What's your objective, and how does your activity, how is it a solution? Thank you.
On.perfekt is a cooperative and a social company, and our goal is to give a second life to imperfect food pieces by creating new selling points that did not exist until now. And we're talking about, let's say, imperfect producers. We mean fruits and vegetables that, because they don't look good, are just being put aside because the quality is the same. So here you can see in this basket a few examples. So we have here potatoes that have a weird form. We have here shallots that are too round. Yeah, it's weird. It's funny. But this is exactly what's going on, is that we try to communicate in a very funny way and playful way. Let's say, for example, the carrots, or let's see, look at this. This is a carrot, like white carrot. It looks very weird, but this is a real problem because these vegetables are being discarded. Between 30 and 40% of producers are being discarded because of the way they look. And we cannot do anything with all this quantity just yet. So in Luxembourg, like you said, in Luxembourg, the problem is that it's the same as in other European countries, in neighboring countries.
Oui, qu'est-ce que je voulais dire encore?
What did I want to say? Hang on, I have to have a look at my notes.
Le problème est que les agriculteurs.
The problem is that farmers do not have a market for these producers that are being discarded. So when we started with this project, we first talked to the farmers in order to know what they did with the discarded vegetables, fruits, and we tried to focus on products, food products, which didn't have for which there was no alternative. Thomas, is it the same thing everywhere in the world? Do we have the same problem? Well, the global figure, I think it's about 1/3 of the produce produced that is being discarded. So that's per person per year, that's about 20 to 30 kilograms of vegetables and fruits that are discarded. So I'm not focusing on this particular subject right now, but what I can tell you is that in France we have a law against food waste, and this law forces industry players to introduce very concrete actions. And I don't remember what I wanted to say.
Parce que c'est très très beau.
Because it's very beautiful. No, it's really beautiful. We just got our plates. So this new legislation in France forces players in the industry, especially supermarkets, to introduce measures. Supermarkets, for instance, they don't have the right to throw away produce that are still edible.
Je sais pas comment c'est au Luxembourg.
They have to make sure that these things are not edible before they throw it away. I don't know how it is in Luxembourg, but this is something that was put into place. And there are also conventions to generate donations. So first of all, we are awaiting retext on the feedback on this legislation. And the second point about food waste is that
Non, mais c'est sur ça.
Yeah, that was it. That was it. That's enough. So we just got our second plate, and I saw that you were impressed by the beauty of what René cooked for us. So René, this plate was prepared with the produce that we talked about, and with a zero food waste policy. So can we have a bit more information on how you prepare this type of meal, and what are the advice that you can give us when it comes to cooking.
Travailler avec la betterave qu'on avait reçue dans le panier. Donc ces betteraves, on les cuit.
So here I worked with a beetroot that I cooked in a little bit of salt, and there is also amaranth that I used. I used the flowers, and you can use not only the flowers but also the grains. We use it also amaranth in muesli, in cereals. It has health benefits. It can lower your cholesterol levels. It can help you with memory loss and things like this. So we try to concentrate, to focus on the most local product possible, but we also try to focus on health at the same time. So we try to have this symbiosis in the way we cook. And then there is a little bit of quinoa.
C'est 100% végétal.
It's 100% vegetal plate, and we also worked with.
Au printemps, on va l'utiliser.
We also work with ivy that we use in particular during the spring, and this is something that we use for pesto. It is. Really, it has very strong taste, a little bit like wasabi, and it's very delicate. And if we want to cook this at home, how do we do it? Well, the easiest way is that you have to take into account the fact that when you work with vegetables, when you cook vegetables, it doesn't matter if the way they look, but you never cook it with water, in water. You have to cook it slow, at low temperature. To avoid also using drinking water for cooking. So I have this principle of not cooking vegetables with water, in water. So I grill them, I put them directly in a pan, and I also work with small portions. I don't want to have too big portions, because if you have big portions, all the nutrients have to be in the plate, and your plates are small portions. Julia, I would like to talk about short production cycles. When you're working with producers, you try to focus on having better revenue and to work in a fair manner. How do you work with them? Well, being in contact with our producers is essential for us. We started the project by asking farmers and agriculturists how they work. And this is how we started. It took us one season, so one entire year, so to say, in order to understand the system and the different cycles, the pathways, or where the products go. And then we started talking about how we could act and how we could really have an impact, and where in the system we could really have an impact. And this direct link that we have with farmers and producers is that we have the possibility to pay fair prices to our producers, and at the same time our prices are very good for our clients. They are fair prices for our clients too, because it's important for clients not only to have fair prices but also to know where the products come from.
Oui, c'est très élémentaire.
Yes, it's elementary for us to have this double-edged sword, so to say. I'm also again going to give my plate to someone in the audience, so my colleagues will find someone to taste this wonderful food. And since we're talking about the link with producers, I'm not going to talk to Chuck. So Chuck, you are the CEO of Soil Capital. You accompany producers in soil regeneration. So you are part of the B Corp movement. It's a group of companies that have decided to work together for the society and for the planet. So could you explain to us how your company, Soil Capital, works?
Merci à tous d'être là, mais merci.
First of all, thank you very much to all of you to be here.
compagnons
And also thank you very much to my colleagues here around this table.
en même temps qu'on parlait d'alimentation.
So we talked about agriculture and farming at the same time as we were talking about food. And it's impossible not to talk about agriculture and in particular regenerative agriculture when we're talking about food. So regenerative agriculture is not the same thing as consuming agriculture because in the 20th century we accelerated the degrading of soils. I'm sorry, but his microphone is off, so I can't hear everything he's saying. So we have seen a little bit everywhere in the world that across the decades the soils have been degrading really fast because of the chemicals, the pesticides that are being used, and also the intensity with which soils are used for production, for growing crops. And right now we start understanding that we can restore soil fertility. There are practical examples, for example, rotating crops, to change the type of pesticides and of fertilizers that we are using, to also have using vegetation around the crops, over the crops, in order to help the soil keeping water, and then to better, so to say, manage water in the soil. Because if there are other plants around the crops, they can retain the water and help the water to be released slowly in the soil in order for the crops to be watered in a natural manner. It's also to reintroduce animals. Helping the crops to grow, to have a farm, to see farms as being an ecosystem, to use, for example, animal waste as fertilizer, and that helps us working with nature.
Surtout, je voudrais très rapidement.
And also, I would also like to say that there is one idea that is wrong. Is that
Nécessairement faire des choix.
You need to choose between nature and productivity. It is not true, because we find ourselves in a moment where soils are being poorer and poorer every year, and that we really need to focus on this, because if we do not take care of our soils, we will have productivity problems in the future. So we need to make sure that soils remain fertile. So what solutions are offered by regenerative agriculture? To give you a few examples, or at least some benefits that we can see, is that with climate change, 1 hectare in Europe, when it's managed in a way, is probably going to emit a very high level of CO2.
À la sortie du champ.
And in regenerative culture, you can make sure that there is less CO2 being emitted being released in the atmosphere. We can stock 10% more CO2. So agriculture, which is about 2% of GDP in our regions in Europe, can become a solution for 20% of CO2 emissions in Europe, because agriculture accounts for about 20% of CO2 emissions. So, and then there is also another aspect, which is basically having sovereignty, food sovereignty in our regions. So there are a lot of different stakes, erosion, biodiversity, and so on. But one benefit that for me is paramount. It is the fact that
la condition d'agriculteur.
We can really give agriculture a better image, because we know at the moment that a farmer is usually working in a farm, isolated, and they don't make a lot of money, they have very thin margins, and everybody thinks that agriculture is destroying our planet, that farmers are destroying our planet. And with a program like the one that we introduced, we are able to understand what are the regenerative practices that farmers can implement, and we can allow the food industry to pay farmers not only for the products that they produce, but also for the resilience that farmers generate on the long term. So when we work with very big food industrials like Cargill, which is probably the biggest global trader in this market, Cargill is very aware that it's not only a matter of idealizing agriculture, but also because we need to make sure that we produce enough, that the supply chain is still working, that we can supply without fault. And we need for that in the food industry to make sure that we have socially more acceptable recognition that farmers are decently paid. I would like now to talk about nutrients and the quality of food that we consume. So on this particular subject, we are a little bit late. A living soil guarantees that a plant is healthy, because if soils are dead, plants will be very vulnerable to sickness and parasites. So when you buy food that is poor in nutrients, usually you have a lot of pesticides residue on these plants, on these vegetables and fruits. So the healthiest the soil, the least you will have to use pesticides. So this is why when we say that a vegetable or an apple has lost I don't know how many % of nutrient value compared to the same product at the time of our grandparents, it means that these vegetables have grown in an environment that is poor. And research at the moment is exploring this particular subject, and I can't really say that all the research has been done yet, but we have a very strong intuition that this is what is happening, that you can eat a great variety of foods, but the quality of soils has a huge impact on what you're eating and the nutrients. I will now ask our chef to come back to us, because there is a seat for him at the table. The last plate that you prepared for us, it reflects your vision on the stakes linked to food and health. So,
attends, le micro fonctionne?
Is the microphone on? Okay, it works.
C'est bon, on m'entend?
Yes, everybody hears me. Great.
C'est bon. Donc ici, c'était le but de travailler sur.
So the goal here is to have local products, and it started with 2 young Luxembourgish entrepreneurs. They started a mushroom culture. mushroom cultivating. And the problem is that our in our restaurant, we are cooking without lactose, without gluten. Well, for me, gluten is a problem. So here, it's just some sourdough with some mushrooms, a little bit of hazelnut oil, and a little bit of cream. So once again, I will give my food to someone in the audience. So Thomas, there is a great distance between the crop and the plate. So there is a McDonaldization of our food, and I think that it has a lot of impacts. There are a lot of things that we can say about this. Is the microphone working? Yes, it's working. Okay.
Ouais, c'est bon, je pense, ouais. Ah oui. Non, Chuck a dit beaucoup de choses tout à l'heure et je voulais aussi...
A lot of things have been said earlier, and I would like just to add a couple things. Yes, the soils are very important. They are essential. And in France, we have...
qui nous amène en fait à diviser par...
There is a law in France that has been introduced in the last couple of years where we say that there is a zero artificial net, meaning that we need to use less soil, and we have 250,000 hectares being used for crops in France, and we need to diversify crops. We need to use less artificial fertilizers, but soils, they have this great function of storing carbon dioxide, to keep water, to store water. But there is also the need to consider the work of farmers, how much they are getting paid. At the moment, in France, we have the so-called law for orientation and for the future, because I don't know if you are aware of it, but in about 10 years, about 50% of French farmers will retire. So in our foundation, we try to work on this particular stake and also to try to find ways to amend the existing legislation to make sure that we will keep farmers, as many farmers as we've had in the last 10 years, because it's not only small farms, but bigger farms that will close. There is an economical stake here. It's not only about ecology, because the question is, how much can we pay, or how good can we pay farmers for their work? It has to be fair, and it's not at the moment. In France, in particularly, one farmer out of four, especially when it comes to cow breeding, are not paid for their work. So they are basically working full-time, producing meat, but they do not get paid for it because they can only cover their costs. So we need to analyze this. We need to make sure that we can support them, that we can help them, so that they don't find themselves in such a difficult situation. So we have to find what are the possible outputs, how we can accompany them, how we can support them, because it's not enough to say ecological transition is only about using less fertilizers. It's also about transparency of economical value so that we understand where the money goes. And this is something that I wanted to catch in the air, because you talked about
prochainement, en tout cas, on publiera une étude là-dessus.
You talked about value and how revenue is distributed, and then also we need to talk about McDonaldization, ultra-processed food and so on, because we have this propension of cooking less. So because it's too difficult. Very often it takes too much time because we don't have the training for it. We don't know how to use raw foods. So we have a wave of ultra-processed food being offered in supermarkets. So what we need to do is also to try to work with the industry in order to stop offering that type of product, ultra-processed food, to the consumer, because we are also finding finding ourselves in a real jungle of labels because we do not know what labels mean. I worked on this a couple of years ago, and I know how difficult it is for consumers to understand what they are buying and how to read labels. I was a little bit too long here, but thank you very much. Thank you, Thomas. I think we are very comfortable here around this table, and I think that we could talk for hours about this subject, but we can see that there are a lot of different questions that have been raised here. We will have all the round tables about different subjects, but I would like to give you the opportunity to conclude. I will give you one sentence, and I would like you to give me how you feel about the sentence I started and that you end this sentence also. What about the future of food? It's very good to talk about it, but we need to ask. Thomas, we need more social justice. Julia? For me, future is local and of season. Jean, I'm sorry.
Non, j'aurais pas pu mieux le dire, je pense aussi.
I can't say it better. I think the future is in local.
Je vais dire régénérative.
Chuck. Regenerative, without any surprise. Thank you very much. Thanks to the 5 of you for sharing with us today. I can only advise you to start changing the way you consume food, and also in terms of how you cook if you haven't done it yet. Thank you very much for your attention.
C'était excellent.
Merci, merci beaucoup Nancy, merci à tous pour cette...
Thank you very much, Nancy. Thank you to all of you for this roundtable. It was a bit of a frustrating roundtable, wasn't it? Because we saw the food and we couldn't eat it. Okay, maybe a little bit frustrating.
Bon, alors, ici, on va...
So, here we're going to talk about food and water. And we're talking about a key domain when it comes to water resources. According to the Fondation, food accounts for 72% of water consumption in the world, with bad students, corn in particular. And you're talking a lot about, in your book, about, or you write a lot in your book about corn. Well, corn, we say it's a C4 type plant because of its genetical structure, and corn needs a lot of water. 454 liters per kilo. It's less than wheat. Wheat needs more water, but the needs of wheat are going to be more concentrated at a longer period of times, while corn needs the most water in a very, very tiny window of time in August. And this is a problem because it's a tropical plant and because we do not have in our regions a lot of water, usually at this time of year in August. So 70% of crops in Europe is cultivated for feeding animals, for feeding cattle, and usually it is corn.
est directement lié à notre régime carné.
So a lot of our water consumption footprint, if I can say it like that, is linked to consuming meat and dairy products. So if we did not eat as much meat and dairy products, we would decrease our water consumption by 50%. So it is a criterion on which we can really act to reduce our water consumption. Yes, and it can be done on a global scale, so it has a huge impact, as you say. Yes, Thomas said that we throw away 30% of what we produce, so 30% of the water that also is lost. So by reducing food waste, we really can regain the power of feeding ourselves, and we need to slow down. We can't say it enough. To slow down means to cultivate your own little garden and also to eat what you are cultivating. So I have this huge luck to to have my own big garden, I had to train myself. I had to train for 2 years in order to understand how it works. And we need also not only to do it ourselves, but to support farmers, to support people who are working in crops. We really need to support them because they are feeding us literally. So we see food and water are deeply linked together. Thank you very much, Charlène, for this little zoom in on water and food, and to understand that food is hugely responsible for our water consumption. And we are now coming to the end of this session, and we are going to talk later on about our jobs and occupation, and you will have the possibility now to go on a break, to go to the lounge and to talk with our friends from B Corp and the Sustainability Academy, and we meet again at 5:30. Thank you very much for your attention.